I remember you saying in a radio interview that I was listening to that you just sort of noticed that a lot of men would run for the positions, and by virtue of putting themselves out there and showing that they wanted to be a player, even if they didn't get the position they were going for, they were given some sort of chairmanship in the legislature. And so you just thought to yourself, I'll just run for something, you know, whatever I can, and see where that lands me. And I've noticed that's incredibly important to just have that courage to step out.
And what do you think gave you the courage?
What gave me the courage? My mother. I mean, I think, you know, it's cliche in some ways, but even talking about that math conversation, she always told me growing up that when she was in 8th grade, her teacher said no girl has ever gotten an A in my math class, and no girl will ever get an A. And so she got an A, and you know, she never let me believe for a second that I was dealt any bad cards, but because of who I was. And so when I hear women who may be of older generations, or even women my age, who say, you know, why is it so easy for you to stand up and talk to a group of people? Why don't you have that fear? I don't know if I'm some kind of mutant, but I just don't have that fear. You know, it just never occurred to me to be afraid to speak up for what I believed in and who I was. And that helped me greatly when Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2006 asked me if I would speak first at an event where I was sharing the stage with not only Bernie Sanders, but Barack Obama, when he was a star senator from Illinois. And so there I was standing in front of about 5,000 Vermonters with thousands more outside the door, talking about why young people need to get involved in politics with Barack Obama at my back. So, you know, surely I practiced that speech, I think, more than any other I've ever practiced, but you know, 5 speakers later, he took the podium and said, Bernie, if you don't behave yourself, we're going to run her for the Senate instead of you. You know? So it was just trying not to be afraid and showing people that courage and leading the way that way, and having people turn around and say, you are good enough, you are capable. And I think that really gave me the courage. And having other young women say, your emails to me as the student body president changed the way I look at leadership. I tried to ask people how they were doing and make sure they knew how to get in touch with me and tell them I was always at their service, and check in when big events were happening on campus, hard events might be happening on campus, and any sort of violence or any issues, and I would try to have a conversation with the student body, and that was very new to them. And so they said, you're capable, and I think that's really what I needed. Was for others to turn around and say, this is something that you can do.
Well, you proved them right. You proved them right. Maybe we'll open up to questions. Does anybody have questions? Yes.
First of all, I greatly respect what you've done. I think that as a student trustee, I remember very clearly when you were looking at running from the district in Burlington, where there were other people on the board and other people around who said, oh, that's an old, whatever it was, district, and that your chances were going to be slim. So obviously your perseverance and your persistence prevailed. I'm very taken by the comments about Judge Sotomayor, because I think that absolutely her thoughts are going to be reflective of a Latina woman, and that her opinions are going to be reflective on what her experience is. And I think it's impossible for someone who's a Supreme Court justice, when they're interpreting the law of the land and they are making judgment on a case, to not have that influence what their judgment's going to be. I think that there's no doubt that that's going to be something that's going to make a difference. And to me, it shouldn't make any difference in terms of what one thinks of her candidacy. I can't imagine that she won't be confirmed. And when you look at the United States, I mean, the laws of the land were written by a group of white men. It says all men are created equal, and I think when they wrote that, they meant all men are created equal, and didn't include women. And I think that
or African Americans.
So I think that your discussions are very much on key, and I really appreciate those comments. And I think that you should run for senator very soon.
Yeah. A few years from now, she'll be sitting where I'm sitting, and but somebody younger there. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
I have a comment. About 1950, I was appointed by Governor Tia in Oregon to be the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner.
Really?
And
Can everybody hear her?
I go to the meetings, and the audience is mainly hunters and fishermen and trappers, and ocean fishing, of course, in Oregon too. And they really look down their nose at what did I know about fishing and hunting. And so I had to work 3 times as hard as any other commissioner because I did the research and I went out in the field. And by the end of my 8 years, the newspaper was speaking well of me. So, but it took a lot of extra effort.
Well, congratulations for doing that and taking those risks. And I know how tough that world is.
To complete the 8 years, and also the first one to stay on. And since then, there have been 3 other women in the last 20 years or 19 years that have been on the board or on the commission in our state. And it's something I'll tell you, but I'm 80 years old.
You're doing great. You're doing great. I don't know how many of you here have heard of Molly Beatty. Molly Beatty was a graduate of UVM, an extraordinary woman. And there's another thing that women do differently is they do appoint more women to their, women governors appoint more women governors appoint more women judges. I had the good fortune of appointing Molly Beatty to the Forest Parks and Recreation Office, where she did a super job. She was the first woman, obviously, in that. She ended up with all these guys in the hearings about the deer herd and God knows what. And then she ended up head of the federal Fish and Wildlife Department. President Clinton appointed her to that. Unfortunately, she died young, but she was outstanding in a non-traditional field. So you helped pave the way for Molly Beatty.
And I've been thanked for it by numerous other ladies.
Good. Yeah.